Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Well, if you're expecting some April Fool's prank from me, you're barking up the wrong tree. I hate April Fools because I hate I hate people tricking other people. I rarely think it's funny. The more I think, I really am a stick in the mud. I think it comes from an intention, a good place, in that I hate seeing people, I don't know, humiliated or confused or whatever. So, what totally did me in on April Fools was when I had a talk radio show on WTAE, and I don't know, I can't even, as usual, I sort of like have just this foggy memory, but another radio host, one Dimitri Vassileros, had apparently used the airwaves to say that he and I think he said, were getting married or something to that effect, or and it like took off. And this is before social media, but it went viral in its day. And I had to fend that thing off for so long. Never mind that the last person on earth I would marry or be involved with is Dimitri Vassileros. He loved this. He, I think I bumped into him about 5, 6, 8, 9 years ago. I can't tell years, distance, time of years anymore. I don't know if something happened 10 years ago or yesterday. And I think that's an aging thing too, I suspect. Anyway, yeah, he mentioned it right away when we somehow bumped into each other. Oh, so no April Fool's jokes from me. And I hope I don't get had with one. Oh my God. So Mondays are always a little odd because, yeah, we haven't spoken in days, and invariably a lot has happened. Somehow I feel like this weekend not as much happened, or it could be that I just wasn't paying attention. I've been knee deep in all the NCAA March Madness stuff. Wonderful games, great games. My team rarely wins, but really some great games. And lest you haven't noticed, the Pittsburgh Pirates are in first place. They might never lose a game. Yeah, they're 4-0. I wish they wouldn't do this to us. But strong start from the Bucks, and I'm happy happy to say it. Also, on the subject of the eclipse, which is coming up in 7 days, I hadn't really paid much attention to it, and I do recall having said on this program that I could not comprehend how people would drive, hours and hours and hours just to see this thing happen. Big deal. It gets darker, then it gets totally dark, then it starts getting light again. And we know because the moon is passing in between the sun and the earth. And I don't know why. Again, I'm a stick in the mud. I'm a wet blanket. So I said I wouldn't trap any. And it might be cloudy. If it's cloudy, give it up. And it's so often cloudy around here. But last night I was with some folks, and one of them was very excited because he just gotten his glasses to look at the thing. and he told me something I didn't know, which is that we are, not in the path of the totality, but about 90%. Do you want to see the whole thing? All you have to do is go as far north as Erie. But of course, a million other people are going to be going as far north as Erie. And I think best to stay in your own backyard if you can. I don't know. So I'm feeling like I'm wavering now. And I even Googled what time should this thing start in Pittsburgh, and it said around 2. So I guess I'll get myself a pair of glasses and get with the group. I don't know, but I ain't going to Erie. And apparently, this is my last shot. My last shot. Because, oh, this is good news. Some good news I saw. You know how Americans' longevity has been going in the wrong direction? I mean, really, the wrong direction. Our life expectancy is not good compared to other supposedly civilized nations. But it turns out that in 2022, the average life expectancy of an American person went up a little bit. We stopped the slide. Stopped the slide. These are according to 2 different studies, both reach the same conclusions from the CDC. And they figure that this little bump up is because COVID is somewhat contained, and but life expectancy still is lower than before COVID came upon us. But it says now that the average life expectancy has risen by more than a year. Hey. And you know what it is? It's 77 and a half years. That's what it is. And since what that means, to me personally, it means I got a year to live. That's what it means. If I'm average, but I must say, average is not what I usually am in any way. So I don't think whatever, but they're at 77 and a half, in other countries it's 80 or beyond. So whatever. Anyway, what are we gonna talk about today? I don't have a clue. I really don't. And I this happens to me every once in a while where I just sort of reach a point that I just can't, I just can't. Reading the paper is like, if you're a masochist, it's just wondrous. But if you're somebody who is inclined to depression or something, you don't, or anxiety, it's not the thing to do. You wouldn't want to. So I'm not exactly sure where I should go talking about stuff here with you guys. You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to start with something that I saw in the Bulwark. Is that how it's pronounced? Bulwark. I don't know why I have trouble pronouncing a word like that, or being concerned that my pronunciation is not correct. But there's been a lot of things popping up in my vicinity about fascism lately. Robert Reich did a big long thing, even did a video. It's on YouTube, the 5 steps of how the U.S. can just 1 minute be the U.S. we sort of knew, and then bango, Donald Trump gets reelected, and we'll be goose stepping down the streets. And then somebody else pointed out that it was on this date 100 years ago that Adolf Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in prison. But when he came out, he got to work. So yeah. So there's all these sort of like, my God. So Hitler was already up to no good 100 years ago. And then here's another history. History is incredible. And having that sort of bird's eye view, that longer view, is fascinating. Of course, you have to wait until whatever it is that you find of interest is over. It's been done, and you know the outcome. And it's interesting how that bird's eye view, you just see things unraveling. You want to like scream, "Don't you see where this is going?" And people didn't. And to see that happening again in our time, in our country. So let me just share this with you because I found it fascinating. Just to remember history, and specifically history involving Adolf Hitler, who, as I said, 100 years ago today, went into prison for his role in the beer hall putsch. He was just getting started. So we move ahead to September of 1940. And believe me, Hitler is triumphant. He had already, 2 years earlier, 38, annexed Austria. He had invaded and occupied Czechoslovakia. A year before that, he had invaded and conquered Poland. And he's a busy guy. In the first months of 1940, he invaded and occupied Norway, Denmark, Belgium, and the Netherlands. And at the same time, on our side, you maybe have seen the movie Dunkirk. The British narrowly escape just a devastating defeat. The whole history of our world would be if they hadn't managed that unbelievable citizen involved heroic evacuation from Dunkirk. And so just 1940, Hitler's invading every country under the sun. The British are on the run. France was already overrun by the Nazi blitzkrieg. And German troops were marching down the Champs-Élysées. Edward R. Murrow was reporting from London amid bombardment by the Nazis. And here in the United States, an organization was launched called America First. Stop and think about that. That was the crowd that wanted to make sure we stayed out of that roiling hellscape across the ocean that Hitler had begot. And there was a huge part of America that, and most were Republicans. I got news for you. Most were Republicans. America First was extremely powerful. You had Charles Lindbergh. You had lots of Americans. They weren't saying it, but they were very happy to take Hitler's side. They just didn't want, they didn't want to be pulled into it. They weren't coming to the aid of England or France or any of these other damn countries. No. Now, the difference then was that in 1940, the Republican nominee for the presidency, a guy named Wendell Willkie, he stood steadfast against the American Firsters in his party. Today, the American Firsters, overwhelmingly Republican, have a different nominee. And he has taken as his mantra, his mantle, America first. He does not see it as our responsibility to stand with allies. He does see it to cozy up to the dictators of the day. So the Trumpians who want to sever this country from the rest of the world, who want to run and hide and stay only in our fortified borders, are not only, absolutely bringing back that same worldview, call it a fascist worldview, that had a strong showing in this country in the 1930s. And it makes you that they do not comprehend why we should go to the aid of Ukraine. The people standing in the way of aid to Ukraine are no different than those who stood to aid and abet Hitler in the 30s and early 40s here. It's the same thing. They don't get that alliances are important. They do not get that if you stand with nobody, you become extraordinarily vulnerable. Where did I read something that had me cracked up? It was something that Mike Johnson said. I believe he's the Speaker of the House. He said, oh God, I hope I can find this. Of course I can't. He went to church yesterday, of course. It was Easter. And he said he stopped outside his church in Shreveport to read a statement. Did you hear it? I'll give you a little bit. After praying on it, good God, after praying on it, I've decided to bring the Ukraine aid package to the floor of the house as soon as we reconvene in a week. Now, he ain't done. Moses, he said. God, these guys. Moses stepped up to confront tyranny in his day, and I'm going to follow his example. What is with these Republicans now, these Trumpified Republicans, that they're so wrapped up in the Bible and the flag, and they see themselves, Trump passing himself off as like this Christ-like figure and seeing, I will take the slings and arrows for you. And people buy it. Trump as Jesus. Any country that finds itself with a sizable part of the population seeing Trump as Jesus is in deep, deep jeopardy. And here's the Republican leader of the House of Representatives leaving his church and immediately making a statement after he's prayed on it that he will, yes, allow a vote on aid to Ukraine because he sees himself as Moses. Moses stepped up to confront tyranny, and I'm going to follow his example. I mean, if it's one thing to be sort of creeped out by all this kind of thing, it's another thing to be understandably terrified. Just because to us, it's also unbelievably ridiculous. These people, they're powerful. And they hold a whole bunch of others in their thrall. But more good news just dropped. One of those dang polls. In fact, the New York Times Siena poll, which I believe last time it came out, it showed Trump, ahead of Joe Biden. They have released their latest poll. It was released at 6 a.m. today, and it shows President Joe Biden opening up a 5-point lead over former President Donald Jesus Trump. And they talk to some of the people in the poll, and then they cherry pick certain statements from regular, ordinary folks. And in this case, it was a woman in Waukesha, Wisconsin, who was attending church on Good Friday. And the pollster not only asked her all the questions, but asked her for some of the reasons why she felt that Biden was better than Trump. And this is a woman who had voted for Trump. And do you know what she said? That ridiculous Lee Greenwood Bible, that was a bridge too far. Whoa. She was fine till he started hawking the Bible with a special Lee Greenwood song lyrics. You cannot make it up. I was saying, somebody said, did you see Saturday Night Live? Blah, 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 blah. And I have not, but God knows enough people have told me about it. I feel like I've seen it. But I was thinking, Lorne Michaels, the guy, the producer of Saturday Night Live, he should, he could lay off literally half his writing staff because Donald Trump is is writing, I mean, they just take Donald Trump's words and hilarity ensues. I mean, in that respect, the guy's amazing. Okay, so I have to tell you, something happened today that I have not a clue, and I haven't had an opportunity to check this out. Feel free to check it out yourself. I am so astonished by it. I was informed by YouTube, which many of you may be watching or listening to right now, because that's where my stuff is. YouTube sent me an email. And I thought, oh, this is one of the, you know how you don't trust anything that comes into your email box or messages, anything. You think, if I click on this, will my entire life cease to exist? I mean, is this a big mistake? Am I being an idiot? You know, you just don't know. And I've gotten very, if there's not a subject line, if I am not fully aware of what they're talking about, you know, I keep getting things saying your shipment is on the way. And, you know, I'm thinking, shipment? What? And I realize these are things that if you click on them, you could be a goner. So I wasn't sure when I saw this, but here's what it says, and I think it is legitimate. It says YouTube removed your content. And then it went on to write me a little letter. Hi, Lynn Cullen Live and Pittsburgh City Paper, it says. We wanted to let you know our team reviewed your content and we think it violates our medical misinformation policy. I thought, wait a minute. I wasn't saying vaccines were bad. What? What medical misinformation have I been giving out? It goes on. We know you may not have realized that this was a violation of our policy, so we are not applying a strike to your channel. I guess they're telling me I'm still able to be on YouTube. However, they say, we have removed the following content. And then I just haven't had time to look at it. They removed my show from 10 years ago, April 8, 2014. And then they get more specific. You can see an example at 40 minutes and 31 seconds into your video. Now it could be, this would be when there was video as well, right? Well, this is one example. There may be other instances. We realize this may be disappointing news, but it is our job to make sure that YouTube is a safe place for all. What the? So I haven't had a chance to look at this, and I'm not sure I can, because when I click on the thing, it requires anyway, I can't do it now. I what I mean, I can't begin to imagine. And why would it come 10 years later? What possible? Unbelievable. And it really does look totally, yeah, above board. But I guess I better tread pretty carefully now, giving out any medical uh, information. Jesus H. That damn hawk that took my fish. That damn hawk is just hanging out in the neighborhood. I saw it yesterday right across from my house, sitting way high up in a neighbor's tree. And you know, that hawk looked a lot fatter than it had the last time I saw it. My fish was a big fish. He looked fat and happy, and I keep saying he, could be a she. Don't know. I have always believed in making mistakes. Um, I really have. The only way I've ever learned anything is by failing. Um, uh, Making mistakes is how you learn. And when I encounter people, especially young people, who've either been told or they've misunderstood, who think that making a mistake is like the worst thing. Children who think they have to be like perfect. And what a boring thing that would be. So I have always felt that making mistakes are the only way people learn. But maybe that's a little too much, but it's pretty much the only way I learn. And that's why when I think I've told you this before, when I was asked to give a high school graduation address, I think it was Northgate. Is that a district? I think so. It's a long, long, long time ago, and I did the exact opposite of what I suppose. I said, yeah, I said to the graduates, go out and fail. I'm telling you, fail, make mistakes. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. And I do think that's true. And then I came upon this stuff about mistakes, how some things, many wondrous things, are the result of mistakes. A mistake in the laboratory. So I remember reading once about how Velcro was, created, and that had to do with a. No, I don't think Velcro was a mistake. Um, Whatever. It was a mistake. Penicillin. Yeah, that extraordinary lifesaver, Alexander Fleming, who rightly gets credit. Uh, he he was a little sloppy in his lab, and he left. He went home for the weekend and left an uncovered petri dish out. And when he returned, man, there was something growing in there. This weird, weird mold. And being a scientist and quizzical by nature, he looked into it and penicillin because he'd made a mistake. A new one that I found that I just love is from 1905 and involves an 11-year-old boy. And his name I don't know, but imagine this. Same kind of thing as Fleming, and maybe it's something to do with men never picking up after themselves, not quite cleaning like a woman might clean. Uh, so Fleming doesn't clean up, and we get penicillin. And the 11-year-old kid was outside in the San Francisco area somewhere playing, and he'd been drinking a sugary fruit drink, and it had a little stirrer in it. Kept having to stir it, or all the sugar was dropping to the bottom. And for some reason, he put it down. He didn't bother picking it up. He got called in for supper or something, and in he went. And that was that. And the next morning, he came out, and what he found was the first popsicle. Yeah, it'd been a cold night, and his sugary drink had frozen with the stick in it, and lo and behold, it was a popsicle, and it was good. And he began actually making these popsicles. Obviously, you could only make them in the winter, but he made them, and he began selling his popsicles around town, and he later patented it. Popsicles. Again, I think the lesson here is don't clean up. Actually, I'm getting these things from that part of the New York Times I love so much. Comes out once a month, which is the kids section. And they always have, just sort of wonderful bits. And this was about this whole edition was about screw ups, and how to handle them, what you do with them. But in this case, how history, it says, is littered with screw ups, ones with disastrous consequences, even some that turn out to be happy accidents. And they then go on to, you know, give us another one. By the way, was I think this was in not Pittsburgh, but Pennsylvania, and it was that toy that I bought. I bought one recently for one of my great nieces, the Slinky, which always blew my mind. The Slinky was discovered in 1943, again by a guy working as, in a scientific capacity, having nothing to do with children's toys. He was an engineer, and he was working on springs for shipping equipment. I don't know. Springs for shipping equipment? That's what it says here. And he knocked one of the springs off a shelf, and the Slinky was born. Don't ask me. Oh, and here's something I did read about that, and I meant to talk to you about. Have you heard about the rat hole in Chicago? It's so weird. I mean, it's funny what I think. Well, I'll just read it. They don't know when, but a rat uh, fell into some wet cement on a sidewalk in Chicago, and well, he left, or she left. Why do I always assume animals are he's? He left a rat-shaped, uh, indentation with claws, tail. I mean, he really went down on his side. Now, he must have gotten back up. I don't know. But there, then, forevermore, is a rat shaped indentation in a Chicago sidewalk. And essentially looks like, it's like as if a fossil, it's almost like a fossil, right? And someone took a picture of it this year. I don't know how long it had actually been there, took a picture of it. And in these times, social media did the rest. So this thing became, the Chicago rat hole became, viral, went all over the world, and it has become literally a tourist attraction. A rat falls in wet cement. And next thing you know, you got vendors on the street and people making money. I mean, you can't make it up. else I read that I found fascinating, and so I'm going to treat you to it. Again, I think the New York Times, sometime, maybe Friday, did this piece about a dinner party, an event that was held in downtown Manhattan, and the guest list was, the who's who of black intelligentsia. Is that? I didn't say that right. I'm starting to sound like Donald friggin' Trump. Um, I mean, you'll know the most recognizable figure at the event for most of us, and there were white people as well, but was W.E.B. Du Bois. And just in case you didn't know, he was the first black person to earn a doctorate at Harvard, and obviously, I mean, he was, an extraordinarily important intellectual of the 20th century. Uh, his, I think, his seminal book is "The Souls of Black Folk," and that came about in 1903. This dinner that I'm talking about was 1924, and they are the headline on the piece is "The Dinner Party That Started the Harlem Renaissance," and is a fascinating read. And W.E.B. Du Bois had just come back into the country. He'd been in Liberia as an envoy of President Coolidge, and I guess it wasn't just that he'd done Senegal and Sierra Leone, but he was sent off to do that. Then he came back to this party and a lot of other stuff. And one of the other people there was this young writer and poet. He was a poet as well, wasn't he? I always found his name so strange, County Cullen. Not just because we share a last name, but county. County Cullen. It almost sounds like, well, in Ireland, there are many counties that people come from, and my people come from County Cullen. But County Cullen, at the time of this party, was a lot younger than W.E.B. Du Bois. He was actually an undergraduate at NYU, and he'd already had work published. So he was a pretty impressive young writer. But the little tidbit that came out of this that I thought, oh my God, Du Bois, I got to tell you this because I found it so interesting. So County Cullen really sought out Du Bois as a mentor, and they did become close. And Du Bois, in fact, who had only one surviving child named Yolanda, he blessed the union of his daughter and County Cullen. And just weeks before Du Bois' daughter and County Cullen were wed, he became one of the first Black writers to be awarded a Guggenheim Fellowship. And with it came this bunch of money that was so wonderful. He looked at it and thought, woo, I can go live in Europe for a year. And he thanked his soon-to-be father-in-law profusely, wrote him. He said, I'm sure my getting this Guggenheim was due to no small degree to your endorsement of my application. Thank you. The wedding? The black news media covered every detail. For 1,200 people were invited. 3,000 people showed up. County Cullen and Yolanda Du Bois. Nina Yolanda Du Bois. And pretty much after the wedding, I don't know how long, but shortly, County Cullen packed his bags and took off for that year in Europe. But he didn't take Yolanda with him. He took off for Europe with his best man. She was not happy. No word on what W.E.B. Du Bois said, but 2 years later, they were divorced, and he admitted that he was, in fact, gay. So, I mean, just, I love history. I do. It's wonderful stuff, fascinating stuff. And what you realize is that people are just as they've always been. It doesn't matter what age you're living in, what the times are, people are just people. You know, talking about that sort of ability to have that bird's eye view of something, to look back, to see the consequences of decisions made, of, looking at world history, looking at your own history. I mean, when you can finally get enough distance to see more clearly, the classic, to see the forest for the trees. It was pointed out by somebody that COVID, and I mentioned it earlier about our life expectancy getting a little bit longer, that COVID has done so much to us. I think I said this last week too, but the fact that we're now 4 years out, there is a little more clarity, perhaps, and you realize how quickly we suppress trauma. Because if you were to ask yourself to go back in your head to those first weeks, first months when the world as you knew it ceased, and everything as simple as being able to go to the store or attend your church or school or shake someone's hand, uh, go out to dinner, everything all of a sudden, no, not. And there people were dying. It was a terrifying time. And because we are so used to getting saved by, I don't know, science, medicine, we forgot what it's like, I think, to feel truly vulnerable, at sea, not even certain where the enemy was. how it got to us. It was a terrifying time. And I remember thinking often, if you try to get back into your head 4 years ago, I remember thinking, I will never shake someone's hand again. If I live through this thing and it's over, I'm never shaking a hand again. It's stupid. But we shake hands, the fist bump, the elbow touch, remember all that? No, we've returned almost. It seems to me. I remember, stop and think how much, because we didn't know anything. I remember once walking my dog, and a runner, a guy, was running toward me, and he was huffing and puffing, and I watched him approach, and I remember thinking, "You son of a bitch, move! Don't come so close to me, spewing. Do not!" And he banged this, and I turned my head and then tried not to breathe as I hurried away. And I remember wishing all kinds of, horrible things on that jerk. I was that afraid of a guy jogging. Walking the dog, there was a woman who was making masks, even though we were told we didn't need to wear them. And she was making these homemade masks and then putting them on the bushes outside her house so that if you wanted one, you could take one. But I think most of us have buried much of what happened to us, how we felt, and the ability to forget. I mean, I'm sure it's a survival skill, I suspect, but I'm wondering if we'd do better to remember. The guy who edits The Week magazine was thinking the same stuff. And he says the fact that our brains often just scrub painful memories, traumas, that can hurt you if you let something that you experienced that had a profound impact, if you let it go without taking it in, you know, giving it a proper place. And he says the fact that he's seeing people who essentially have like a brain fog, which is one of the side effects that some people with long COVID have, a brain fog that just doesn't let you quite get back into how it felt in those early months. And he ties that to the upcoming election and says, so Donald Trump's now saying, are you better off 4 years now than you were 4 years ago? He says, then we would be well advised not to forget the painful reality of 4 years ago and his outrageous bumbling as the leader of the country in that terrifying time. And this editor, who's got the strangest first name, Theunis Bates, he said, in fact, we have a duty, we have a responsibility to remember that horrible first year, because Donald Trump was the president. Hey. Okay. And speaking of that, another huge impact, which is now all over the country, schools are still trying to get stabilized again, is that absenteeism among students is just off the charts still. An estimate, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, you know, you went to school. There was never any question. You went to school. Your parents would never give you like a mental health day or something. No, you went to school. The idea that you could skip school? It's now estimated that 26%, over a quarter of all public school students in the United States, are now considered chronically absent. These are the figures from last year, but it has shown no difference thus far, in 24. Imagine a quarter of your class, those desks empty. And you might assume, oh, well, that must be, in the poorer sections of town. No. These same kinds of historic absentee rates are coming from big districts, small districts, cut across race, income. Districts in wealthy areas saw chronic absenteeism double, with an average of about 19 to 20% of students not bothering to show. And lest you think it would be, oh, well, that's because the Democrats and the liberals closed those schools down, which now has been proven to be an overreaction and a stupid thing that had more ill effect on our kids than the virus itself. But the reality is that even districts that reopened quickly, shut down for a bit and then said, we're opening it up, they have also seen vast increases in chronic absenteeism. So I don't know what impact that's going to have, but it can't be a good one. There's no way that can be a good one. And again, we're still not far enough away to see the impacts of COVID and that pandemic. But I do think the impact personally, individually on us, and then collectively on us, and especially for young people, school age people, I think this will be huge. It's as if, you could read, you cut a tree down and you can read the history of that tree. Humans, this is COVID left a scar, physically, psychologically, and perhaps continues to do so. And we really can't quite get it, feel it, because we're still not far enough away from it. I think that's it for me this day. Thank you for bothering to listen, if in fact you did. And I'm going to be back tomorrow. And I hope my sister in tow. God knows we had some difficulty last week, but we'll hope that Susan can spend the hour with us as well. I hope you have a great day yourselves. And I'm going to say toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.